Hello everyone, my name is Giana Darling and I'm a best-selling romance author. If you're new here, I usually talk about travel, writing, and my favorite books. Today I am going to tell you a little bit about what a typical day writing in my life looks like. I'm not going through a day in my life, but honestly just like what happens when I sit down to write, usually what my setup is, what my process is. It definitely varies. I am not one of those authors who has a set routine and like a set pattern or any kind of suspicions or what is it? Not suspicions, like rituals or anything like that when I have to write. Literally, I went to the Taylor Swift concert last weekend and I was writing on the ferry with my 3 girlfriends sitting beside me, chattering away. Just super easy for me to get in the zone when I'm ready to write. So I don't need a specific setup. I do have an office, which is just back here, but I don't always write in there. I actually usually do my admin work in there, and I like to write throughout my house. Honestly, it depends on which book I'm writing. There's been times where I've written one book writing entirely from a specific chair or from bed or from the couch or wherever it may be. Sometimes a space will just click with me more when I'm writing a certain type of book. So again, I don't really have a ton of things that I have to do in order to be ready to write. In fact, I can write at the drop of a hat. If I ever have writer's block, it's not because I can't think of ideas or I just can't force the words out. It's usually because I have so many ideas of where the book could go that I'm kind of stymied in which one to pick. And that's only happened to me a few times. It happened to me in Dead Man Walking, and it happened to me in a book that I just finished writing in the last few weeks, where I had so many ideas for how I could wrap everything up and kind of how I could form the climax of the story that I was like, oh my God, what do I do? So I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about what I do when that happens, but also like just what a writing day looks like. So I've sat down, it's a Sunday, I'm wearing my Seahawks outfit because the Seattle Seahawks football team is playing and I'm a big Hawks fan, but I've sat down to do some work before I watch the game. I've got some lunch here that I probably will eat before I start really writing after I film this. And I have a hot drink actually today because it's Christmas time. I have some hot chocolate that I made with oat milk and some cinnamon, and I like to put a little sea salt in it. Honestly, my tea or hot drink usually goes cold by the time I really get into it because I'm so in the rhythm that I don't really stop for breaks, but it's something that I always have. I also have my water bottle to stay hydrated. But again, those are things that kind of fall by the wayside when I really get into it. And I also obviously have my computer. I tend to write, I mostly write in Word. I just like Word. I'm super old school. That's where I started writing, and that's where I like to write still. I do have an app called Scrivener, which a lot of people have recommended, and I did write one book in it, and I did enjoy it just because, I'll show you actually here. So as you can see here, this is Scrivener. It just opens on a generic fantasy. I'm not writing fantasy, so don't get excited. But you can see here that it's kind of nice because it can keep things really organized. So you have manuscript, you have chapters, scenes that like, you know, I'll use the cursor, scenes that you want to have for each chapter. If there's anything pivotal, like say in the climax, you really want to have her get shot, you know, the heroine gets shot, then you can put that in here as reminders. You can have characters, so say that you have any pictures or templates that you refer to for your character development, like, or details like hair, eye color, family tree, places that are important, you know, for the evolution of sin. I might have New York or Mexico. For the Fallen Men series, I might have entrance. Front matter is great just to have on hand in something like this because you usually reuse it. So front matter would be something like copyright page, you know, designer info, acknowledgements, that sort of thing. And then you have back matter as well, which would be something like maybe the first chapter of the next book or other books by Giana Darling. So that's what you can have in here. And you can have it for your manuscript, your paperback, you know, it even has, it shows you here, like you've got copyright, dedication. I usually do an epigraph as well, which is like a quote. And then you have the ebook version. And it's nice to just have that all in one place. Again, it keeps you really organized, especially if you're a writer that's just starting out. Now, my favorite feature is actually notes because I take a lot of notes on my characters or a lot of research, which is also its own little tag here. And you can have whatever you want in there. You know, I usually have bookmarks on my desktop. If we look here, I have Pinterest open because I like to go to Pinterest too when I'm writing just to get in the flow of things. But if you look, I'll go to my bookmarks and you can see like I have a whole writing tab and you can see like all of these different articles that I have bookmarked, you know, Italian nicknames and Florence City Center for, I just wrote a book on set in Italy. So you can see all of these different tags that I have. But that's something that if you didn't just want to have bookmarks, you could put them in your research here in your notes. And then template sheets, character sketches, name, location, role and story, setting, sketch. And they give you these templates, which again is great for writers that are starting out. So I highly recommend this. I don't use it really. I should. And I did use it once for my enslaved duet, and I just fell out of the habit of using it, but it's really good and I highly recommend it. Some authors also use, I believe it's called Dabble, which is similar to this. Now that I've kind of gone through that, I'm not using Scrivener right now, and I'm not showing you what I'm actually working on right now, but I actually have all my books done that are releasing next year. So I have 6 books releasing next year, which is crazy. I've never done that before, but they're all written now and basically done and dusted. I'm just waiting for 2 of them to go to audio. Now I'm working on a project for 2026, which is really exciting. So another thing that I always have in my toolkit when I sit down to write is my notebook. Okay, so I like these like decomposition notebooks. I have like a bunch of them, you know, in cute little covers. And you can see like I have like notes. This is a newer one, so I don't have that many, but like pages of notes on whatever kind of comes to my mind. And I find also, like, if you're ever struggling with writer's block, it's really a great trick to get pen to paper. There's just something, and science has actually shown this, you know, I don't have the studies to pull up for you, but that there is a different connection between like mind and body when in terms of absorbing information and also processing information. So whenever I'm stuck, I will write long form in my notebook, and then I'll transcribe it back to the paper, but just to kind of get my brain working in a different way, I find that helps. And then also sometimes I like to have, especially if I'm stuck on where I want the story to go, then I'll kind of jot down point form notes like, okay, I know that let's take Welcome to the Dark Side, for example, which is, you know, probably my most popular book. You know, I know that in that book, I was really struggling actually with where I wanted to start the story. I was struggling with where I wanted to start the story. So at first I think I had it starting with her doing the lean when she was 17. And then I was like, no, we need more than that. And I went back and I had it be the school shooting, you know, and then I added the letters. So I had all these different ideas and they were all percolating in my head. So I kind of just jotted them down point form and just to see like, how is this going to work? What ideas do I have and what fits in well and pieces together well? So when you kind of are starting a book, it's nice to have a brain dump. And then even as I go on, you know, chapter by chapter, I might be like, okay, actually, I want to remember that I did this little Easter egg, and I love Easter eggs. So I might write down in my notes just to have them here. You can do it on a different document on your computer too, which I do have. I always have a note, like a document open that says notes for this manuscript. And I will also have, maybe I'll have cut a little scene or I'll cut a quote that just doesn't work anymore for a chapter, and I'll put it in there, hopefully to reuse later. That's more what I do with the documents that are on my computer. But I like to have this kind of just on my notebook, little Easter eggs that I want to remember, lines that I want to kind of echo so that they're just right here as well, and that I don't forget them. So that's kind of my setup. I also like to listen to music. So usually what I do is when I'm sitting down to write, unless I've just suddenly like, oh my God, I'm right into it. Usually what I do is I'll turn on my playlist, or if I'm still kind of making my playlist, I might listen to music for a little bit while I reread what I just wrote, like the previous day. I do not read everything that I have written in the book before I write, because as you get further and further into the book, especially my books, which are, you know, very thick, I have one right here, like these are pretty thick books, you know. I write like 110 to 160,000 word books. I can't read 100,000 words before I write every day, because that would just be so unproductive. So I usually read the last chapter or 2 that I've written, if I haven't gone over those yet. Now, something that's important to know is that you're using a different part of your brain when you edit than when you are creating new work. So I usually like to reread and edit that, and then I might take a break and just like let those percolate. I might take some notes on my notebook. I might go to Pinterest and look at, you know, my board before I dive into it, because that's using a different part of your brain. So I would really not recommend, do not write a paragraph and then edit that paragraph, or, you know, write a scene in the chapter and then go back right away and edit that, because you're flip-flopping between these two parts of your brain and you're not going to get the best out of either of them. Some people, I'm sure, do that, but you shouldn't, I don't think. That's my advice, at least, especially just for flow. So anyway, that's usually what I do, and then I get writing. And Usually I will put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I will lock myself away. If my husband's not home, then I'll sit out here, I'll sit in the living room. Or if he's like playing video games or something, then, and he's not gonna bother me, then I'll be in the community space. Otherwise, I'll lock myself in the office or the bedroom because I don't want to be disturbed. Once I get in the zone, I black out. And so if someone knocks at the door or someone calls me, it's really jarring. And I find sometimes that I struggle to know where I was even going with the story because I was in my flow state and it's been interrupted. So once I start getting writing, I really just let myself write. I'm not really gonna stop for anything. If I have to go to the bathroom or something, if I need water, that's fine. But usually I don't even think about doing those things when I'm really kind of sunk deep into that zone. And even if you think it's trash, even if you're writing and you're like, oh my God, I don't like this at all. Get it out, see what happens, because sometimes you have this feeling where you're like, I don't think this is really good. Especially if I've been writing for a while, say I've been writing for a few hours, because I usually like to write in large chunks. I don't like to write 200 words here and 400 words there. I like to do 5 hours of writing, 3 hours of writing, 10 hours of writing. You might think it's terrible as you're in it, especially if it's been 3 hours and you're still writing. You might think you're losing your pizzazz, but when you go back the next day, you'll see that there's actually a lot of goodness in there. So don't be hard on yourself while you're creating. It's that editorial brain that you're gonna bring in later that will really see what's going on. That's kind of usually how I set up for writing. In terms of when I finish writing, usually if I don't stop unless I have something to do. So if I have an appointment or my husband comes home, I'll stop writing at the end of the day, usually before I eat dinner, but I might go back to it after dinner because I'm actually a creative night owl and that's what I find works best for me. And I think that the key to being a successful author and being a prolific author, I don't mean that you're instantly successful, but I mean that you're producing quite a lot of work, is that you hack your own systems. And so there's gonna be times of the day where you're not as productive, where you're not as feeling as creative. In the mornings, I don't feel as creative, so I don't often write as much in the mornings. That's when I go to the gym, that's when I walk my dog, that's when I do my admin, so that by the afternoon, when I'm really starting to feel creative in the evening, that's when I can do my writing. So you kind of gotta learn these things about yourself, write them down if you want to, and just set a schedule if that works for you. I try to write every day. I certainly work every day, but I try to write every day because when you're a self-published author, there's a lot of busy work and you can work all day and be like, I didn't do any writing, very easily. Make sure you set aside time for that creative process. I would say that if I'm in the middle of writing a book, I'm writing a book for a few hours every day. Right now, I'm in the middle of maybe I'm in the middle. Maybe I'm 1/3 through a project. It's actually the next Fallen Men book. When I start to get in the thick of it, I just want to write all the time. So right now my priority isn't doing busy work for admin. It's not doing setting up this or that or checking this or that, learning, because a lot of it is learning. I'm writing every day because I want to maintain that flow. I feel like when I leave a project for a while and then come back to it, it takes me longer to get in it. So I keep referring to the flow state, but it's that state where you feel like when I'm not writing this book, I'm thinking about it, in the shower, when I'm out with friends, I'm like, oh, this would be really good. And I want to add this scene. And it's something that I also take notes on my phone because if I'm out with friends and something sparks me, I don't want to forget that. So I'll have the notes app on my phone and later I might add it to my physical notebook or to that document with quotes and stuff like that I have on my computer. So yeah, that's usually how I structure kind of what I am writing that day. I might make notes too after I do the edits of the previous couple chapters in my notebook, just so I know what to repeat, what threads to bring through, and that just makes it much easier to keep organized. But I will say I'm more of a pantser than a plotter. So when I sit down to write a book, I have the idea, I have the conflict, and I know the characters really well, and that's kind of how I start, which is why I think it's important to keep notes as I'm going, because sometimes things change completely from what I anticipated was going to happen to what's actually happening in that flow state. So when I pick my head up and I go over what just happened, it wasn't what I thought was gonna happen. So it's good to keep organized this way. And I have dozens of notebooks throughout the years from different projects, and it's really fun to look through them as well. So yeah, that's how I structure my work, or my writing time. And those are my hacks to kind of staying productive and staying in that flow state. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'm very happy to answer any and all craft questions. I hope that this was a little bit helpful for you. I am going to do a little thing on writing a series. So if you have any questions about that as well, let me know. I'm going to be vlogging that shortly. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed. this vlog. Like, subscribe, and comment, and I will see you guys next week.